Hopefully that's up. So thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm going to be talking about considerations for reopening, particularly for design, but I'm going to do a quick recap on what we've covered over the past two sessions as well for you, in case you haven't been able to attend. Okay, so we were told from speaking to many restaurant owners that obviously overheads and cash flow are the biggest problems that the owners are facing at the moment. And I don't think that's going to change, especially because turnover is not going to be the same as what it used to be for a while yet. But I think in order to combat that, we need to think about how to oversee the future and think about planning, because we can't change the circumstances, but we can think about what we're going to do and how we're going to do things. In England, we've been given the date of the 4th of July as the earliest possible date for opening. And as Piyush has said, and our team members have said, we're here to learn from each other. We're all in this together, and so hopefully we'll take something from today. I just put this here because not to scare you, but to kind of encourage you to think about the future and how things will be. Previously in recessions, we've seen, if you have a look at the dot-com bust and the financial crisis of 2010, it takes around 2 years, 18 months to 2 years to recover. So this angle here is about 2 years worth, from hitting rock bottom down here to being kind of what you'd call normal, or a successful economy. So hopefully that gives you a bit of encouragement that we've already gone through 12 weeks of this, and it's not going to be forever. So one of the key kind of topics to come up over the last 2 weeks is communication. So, in terms of legal aspects and in terms of finances, employees need to feel safe and valued, and customers need a safe and enjoyable environment. So that the theme and the messages are kind of similar, and it's really important to communicate everywhere. So communicate with your employees and with your customers as much as possible, and that's only going to be a good thing. We are going to be talking about social media strategies and branding, and thinking about your website in the next few events. But this is actually really, really important, and I urge you to think about it now in terms of your brand values and your messaging and what you're putting out there. A lot of operators have been quite worried about, what should we say, what don't we say, we're not open, so should we just stop communication? And I think that is the worst possible thing you can do. Even if you don't know what you're doing, how you're opening, it's really, really important to tell your customers what you're thinking. And we will be talking about this later in later sessions as well. And we've also found that operators are quite worried about hygiene and kind of the whole social distancing, how we're going to manage. And I just want to reassure you that already you're doing so much in terms of retaining your hygiene ratings. I guess the difference really is how you're going to communicate that, and a few extra steps that you might need to take, which I'll talk about later on as well. But it's really important, as I said, to communicate and be more vocal about what you're doing. And branding and social media strategy on your website will certainly help with that going forward. So do tune in to the future sessions as well. Okay, so going on to why we're doing everything. So in terms of social distancing and reducing the risk of infection, what we're trying to achieve with the design decisions later on that I'll be talking about is to really minimize the decision-making time that the customers are on site, and the kind of the interaction between people. And one of the key areas of this is technology. So you're looking at click and collect orders. Many of you have already done this in terms of takeaways, but thinking about how you might be able to incorporate an app and the facilities on your website. What we're really wanting to do is enhance that digital relationship. So how can you still make this a special experience for them? I don't know about you, but previously, if you were to eat out, it was quite a special occasion usually. And things have changed in terms of, it's kind of anytime you want to meet a friend or a business meeting, you'd head to the local cafe or restaurant. But obviously things are going to change. And what you want to think about is kind of go back a step and think, right, how can we make this a special experience for people to come back to? And that's why I want you to really think about the design in terms of, I've seen quite a lot of people do certain things to kind of make themselves COVID safe. And in terms of the future proofing, what you don't want is to make things look clinical, and I'll be talking about that later. So you might satisfy things in terms of hygiene and the kind of government regulations and what you need to do, but will you be attracting your customers? What you don't want to do is put people off. So again, that's what I'll be talking about. HVAC systems, I'm not going to go into detail on this because I can't pretend I'm an expert. So we will be having somebody talking to us about HVAC systems. But essentially, it's an air filtration system, which you can incorporate within the infrastructure of your business and your premises, or you can have standalone units. So I know a lot of the people are thinking about the finance aspect of things and how things are going to impact your budget at the end of the day. And a HVAC system is going to take you back a huge amount of money. But if you get a standalone filtration system, which cost around £500, I've recently bought one for a client. It's a really easy and cost-effective way of managing that part of the environmental health that you need to be thinking about. So like I said, we'll get an expert in on that later as well. As I said, kind of making sure that there's as little contact as possible, again using your tech, so revisiting your payment methods. Pizza Express has been doing this for a number of years now, in terms of payments as well as ordering. So you can literally sit down on the table and have everything ordered before the waiter even gets to your table. So the objective obviously is no cash handling, so that includes tips, so consider apps like Tip Jar as well. But in terms of point of sale, so again, kind of going back to that point about not wanting to feel clinical and kind of wanting that environment, a special environment for people. So thinking about customer service, so do your staff need training or retraining on customer service, and how can you really enhance this without having to worry about the kind of the face-to-face again. Branded masks and aprons, it's quite conflicted in opinion. I know a lot of operators don't want to be doing this, again because of how it comes across. You don't want people to feel like they're not having that restaurant or experience that you want them to have. But I think in the short term, especially at least for 5-6 months, you might want to think about it. And a nice way of doing that is kind of softening it a little bit so it's not looking so clinical. Again, you don't want your medical masks kind of putting people off. So thinking about having branded masks and aprons that I know a lot of companies are offering now is something to think about. So in terms of the service changes you'll be thinking about is having nothing, again, so kind of reducing that contact and reducing the handling of items, things like your Nando's service desk here. You're going to be wanting to keep all of that behind the desk, and only using as much as possible sample size sachets, so that people are not handling the same things over and over again. If you want to avoid the sachets for waste reasons, or that's something I'm really struggling with at the moment, is thinking about the kind of waste reduction and eco-friendly aspects of sachets and the amount of waste that contributes to. Thinking about eco-friendly solutions to that. So I know that people are using paper packets, for example, already quite a lot. Things like bamboo are being used as well. So just kind of being a bit creative in the packaging solutions there. But the essential message here is not to have anything open for numerous people to handle. So everything either behind the desk or not at all at the moment, especially. I did say about the 4th of July being the opening date in the UK. I feel that might be brought forward if people have got open spaces. So, Piyush was talking about lobbying. If you have got open spaces, I think either make it known to your councillors that you need to use them. Obviously, UK businesses need to have a license to use spaces outside. So make sure that you have those in place. But if you don't, maybe contact your local council and your MPs to kind of lobby for those outdoor spaces, because at the end of the day, that's scientifically proven that the contamination is reduced considerably in outdoor spaces compared to indoor spaces. And I appreciate a lot of London premises is not going to have that flexibility of that space outside. But again, kind of being creative with restaurants within your vicinity, kind of making sure that any space is used. It doesn't have to be literally right outside your premises. Maybe there'll be an open site a few doors down or whatever it is, but kind of really being creative about those communal spaces that that you really need to be making use of at the moment. And obviously don't quote me on it, but I think there might be a bit of a relaxed opening for people that do have those openings, those outdoor spaces. And again, kind of making use of the greenery and the outdoors as much as possible. And another thing that I'll be talking about later on is the use of different materials, copper being one of them. So going back to the design aspects that you can think about at the moment. So again, no touch, no contact as much as possible. Sensor operated doors would be obviously the best scenario, but I appreciate that will incur quite a lot of cost and obviously infrastructure as well in terms of what you might be able to do financially. So there are the cost-effective alternative to that is a foot-operated door, where literally it's like a plastic attachment to the current doors that you've got, and that way you can open the doors with your feet rather than your hands, which is a great solution. One funny thing to mention here is if you've got a foot-operated door and you've got a handle, guaranteed people are going to be using those handles. So you might want to remove the handles as much as possible. I know it sounds really ridiculous, but if people are going to be looking at what they've got in front of them, it's the first natural thing that people will go for is the handles. So again, if you want to reduce that contamination, put the little plastic bit on the door, which is the foot operation, and remove the handles. Again, it's quite easy to do and it will reduce that contamination. HVAC systems I've talked about already. One-way entry and exit if possible. I know, again, a lot of people will not have this flexibility or the space to be able to do that. But if you've got a kind of a system throughout, even if you've got one door, you might be able to do a one-way system using tables, for example, to help that traffic flow. And graphics is a great way to use that and to control the foot flow. So you might be able to put like footprints on the floor or something, which I know a lot of people are doing for their takeaways already. Hand washing stations and sanitizers, especially on entry to the site and in front of your toilet facilities as well. Again, kind of encouraging those good behaviors of cleaning and washing hands. If you've got them within your premises, if you're able to do that, I know Nando's do that already. I use them as an example quite often. It becomes kind of a talking point as well. It's a feature within your restaurant. Again, I appreciate in terms of construction, you might not be able to do that at present, but it's something to think about in the future. And obviously, if you've got sanitizers on entry, it's a quick fix to that one. But talking about sanitizers, again, if you want to kind of limit that contamination, try and make it hands-free where possible. All of this is out there already. This is not new. So if you've got hands-free soap dispensers, taps, the new one on the market is the tri-blade, but it'll take you back about £1,500. So it might not be an option at the moment, but again, something to think about later on. Urinals, probably not something that everybody wants to talk about, but again, you want to limit that interaction. So putting urinals in cubicles is something that I think will be more seen going forward. If you can do it now, definitely do it if you can. There is some solutions out there that means you don't have to build walls in particular. It's quite easy to partition things. Again, we're going, the message here is to reduce contact as much as possible going forward. And just some examples. So this is the foot operator I was talking about. It attaches to the bottom of the door. Japanese toilets, it sounds crazy, but I've already installed them in the past 2 projects that I've done. People are thinking about it. You don't want to be touching things, so these operate as soon as they're sensor operated, so you approach them and the toilet lid opens and closes as soon as you walk away. So quite genius and quite clever, and again, it's a talking point. Within the designs, you know, you want people to talk about it in a good way, not in a bad way. So these things are quite high tech, and people tend to talk about it thinking how cool they are because they've never seen them before. And this is an image of the Dyson Tri-Blade. So they've got the washing, the drying, and the soap dispenser all in one unit, which is why they're quite expensive. This I put in there because I'm kind of foreseeing the future here and fortune telling a little bit, but you've got the little toilet signs in aeroplanes, and I foresee that being something that might be incorporated into public spaces such as restaurants as well, simply because you don't want people to be queuing up. So some sort of you know, kind of highlighting system that says that the restaurants have, the cubicles and the toilets are free for people to use is something that I think will be coming into play as well. Anything you can do creatively to kind of let people know, so a big sign maybe to say that there's three cubicles in here, or there's 4 cubicles in here, so people know you know, how much or how long that they might need to wait. So again, trying to reduce that contact as much as possible. So I don't know if you've seen on Twitter, there's been a trending image of plastic shower curtains going across tables and all sorts of funny and inventive ways of partitioning spaces. And again, you know, you want to be a bit intelligent about this, so you don't want to put people off. And to be honest, if there's a place with shower curtains all over the place, I'm not going to be going in there. And I don't know about you, but I think most people will feel the same. So, you know, in doing this, you don't want to be putting people off coming into and eating with you. So kind of, again, thinking creatively, but aesthetically as well. So you're doing what you need to do, but again, making people feel comfortable and having an inviting space. So things like partitioning tables like this, for example, with higher backs. So this is obviously, you know, a place that's quite old, but newer places will have higher partitions, higher backs on these booths, for example, to partition that space, and that will be, you know, it will look nice, but still be serving the purpose. Another couple of ideas are glass screens. Again, they can be decorative as well as functional. I love these, and I think these will be seen a lot more. So these are kind of planters that can be as high as you want them to be, and they're really beautiful, as well as being, you know, plants are known to filter the air as well, so multifunctional, as well as dividing that space. And I think that is a really great solution. Again, in terms of cost, these can be as cost effective as you want them to be. So the more plants you have, the more expensive it's going to be, but I think you can be quite creative with these kind of screens as well. So obviously that's around biophilic design, which actually, you know, at the back end of last year, before COVID hit us, biophilic design was on the up anyway, but I think this will be escalated, you know, hugely because of the advantages of using plants within designs for air purification purposes, but also because of how beautiful they are. Copper surfaces, so the science says that copper is a natural repellent of a lot of bacteria and infections. So cladding surfaces where possible with copper is going to give you some brownie points. Again, there is obviously a cost implication there, but there are different ways of doing it. So solid copper surfaces are obviously going to be more expensive than a copper top, for example, but just something to think about. Removing soft furnishings. So again, you want to be thinking about how easy is your area going to be to clean. Soft furnishings are obviously going to be a lot harder than hard surfaces, and it's going, you know, I'm struggling with this as a designer. I obviously love to have those the soft furnishings for that kind of the comfortable feeling, and for that luxurious, you know, the luxurious touch that they give to interiors. But I think it's really important to think that, you know, for the longevity of things. How often are you going to be cleaning, and how easy is it going to be for you to clean things? So removing soft furnishings where you can is going to be an easy way for you to do this. You know, things like leather backs are going to be a lot easier to clean than a velvet back, for example. And again, thinking about how you use your walls to communicate your messaging, which we're going to be talking about later in terms of branding as well. So you don't want it to look awful, but, you know, kind of menus on walls, for example, is a good way to communicate things. Your company values on the walls, for example, again, to communicate what you want without having some the kind of the things that people are going to handle instead. So again, thinking about menus, we talked about a lot of this already, so I'm not going to go into detail. We talked about this in terms of cash flow. So, but kind of the message here is I really want you to think about what you've got on your menus, so that you, if you did use your walls, for example, so you can communicate that effectively, but also thinking about the changing tastes and focus on health post-COVID, which you might want to be thinking about. People are going to be obviously more inclined to eat healthier and focus on healthier habits. So obviously veganism was on the rise anyway, but I think you need to be thinking about what your healthy choices are on your menu. If you weren't thinking about that already, I think it's something to certainly think about now. In terms of social distancing within your kitchens, so if you were to think about reducing your staff within the kitchens, for example, a pastry chef, an easy way of going around this would be to outsource those certain items that you might want to think about. Again, that's kind of thinking about redundancies if that is something that you're having to think about at the moment, but still offering the same things on your menus. So, you know, contacting local artisans that make pastries or desserts, for example, is one idea of going around this. And we talked about this in our accounts session a couple of weeks ago, but thinking about cash flow being problematic for at least 18 months. So what can we do, and how can we be really creative in terms of, if we can't fill the 100 covers that you've got at the moment, how can we make sure that our cash flows kind of adapt to that? And I know this is going to be an issue going forward for at least the next year. So I know a lot of people have been doing this already, but making sure that you think about continuing to do it. So the takeaways and collection, for example, even when doors open, making sure that you adapt to that delivery model in a way that makes sense to customers. So you're not kind of cutting and chopping and changing. Selling the raw ingredients that you're not able to. We spoke about this already, but again, a simple way of making sure that you're kind of increasing revenue and maximizing it as much as possible. But also kind of, I think at the moment, I've spoken about it already, but collaboration is key. Even if it's with other restaurant owners, what can you do collectively to either lobby Parliament or to kind of share economies of scale, for example, with other businesses in terms of raw ingredients. So the key message here is to kind of limit the costs, because the income is obviously going to be reduced for a little while, hopefully not too long. And that's me done. So if there's any questions, I'm going to stop sharing and pass it over to Lydia. I haven't been looking at the chat box, so excuse me for ignoring you.
Natasha, that was brilliant. Thank you. Lots of great ideas in there. And yeah, we've got a question here. Hinal, did you want to ask the question?
I can do.
Yeah.
Natasha, I know you've put other things to fill, to separate things. Would you say it's a good idea, just to give you an example, I have a station which is probably about 1.5 foot wide, which is normally near the counter and normally has a cutlery and little things like that. My idea was to put that in between the table, so that way it's moved away from the counter, it's a separator. Would you say things like that are a good idea to do?
So again, I think It's worth noting that the government, I didn't mention this, but the government have obviously said 2 meters between tables at the moment, which is stupid, to be quite honest. It's not going to happen, and it's not going to work in most premises. The WHO, the World Health Organization, have suggested 1 meter, which I think is more feasible. At the moment, my designs incorporate 1 meter distances within tables anyway, so that feels like a lot easier way of doing things. So if within your partition it's a 1 meter gap, and then you've got your unit or whatever it is, as long as it's got no cutlery or anything on there, I think it's a really good idea in ways of doing things. So maybe you could put things on top of it to make it look a bit more attractive, maybe some plants or something on top. Again, I mentioned it before, you don't want it to look like you've put it there for that purpose almost. I know that is the reason you're doing it, and you want people to know that that's why you're doing it. But again, you want it to look attractive. You want people to come there and feel like they're happy and they're comfortable, and they're not put into these boxes almost, because I certainly wouldn't want to eat somewhere within a box. So again, it's kind of making sure people think about that way of doing things. But I know the Pub and Bar Restaurant Association are lobbying to reduce those 2 meter rules. So again, it might be something to contact your local councillors and MPs about.
I mean, not watching the news of late, you can see people breaking the rules anyway. Look at the beach and the parks, they're all close to each other. I seriously think once this industry gets back to normality, people are going to break the rules anyway.
Well, I actually, I've been watching the industry since lockdown started. In other countries, people stayed away from takeaways and deliveries. People just didn't want to know anything that wasn't cooked in their own kitchen. But in the UK, that really wasn't the case. Anybody that was offering a takeaway was jumped on, literally. People were, really excited to have not to have to cook themselves. So I think that's going to continue, and I think that the takeaway and delivery service will definitely be something that people heavily rely on. If not restaurants back to normality, to be honest. I think the British are eager to get back in. So I know, actually, I shared an article recently from Tel Aviv, where they couldn't control how many people wanted to come and eat with them, which is an amazing feeling. And I hope that that's going to be the case for the UK market as well, as all over the world, to be honest. I think people are looking to get back to normal as quickly as possible. And like Piyush said, I think people are going to ignore a lot of these rules as well. But I think as operators, it's important for you to follow the rules, even if your customers don't. You offer that the solutions that are there, and if they don't want to stick to them, that's their problem, not yours at the end of the day. So as long as you're doing what you need to do to make sure that your health and your employees' health is obviously safeguarded as much as possible, that's really important.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's about being memorable for the right reasons.
Absolutely.
We've got a question here from Yogesh. So would you like to ask that one? It was.
You know those the hanging plants that you were showing. So how do you order those plants? I was so impressed with those plants. I was trying to order a couple for the office here.
So what was the question?
So those hanging plants that you were showing.
Yeah.
Where do you order them from?
Where do you order them from?
Right. Yeah.
In the first instance, speak to your local florist. I know that they're all struggling as well, but your local florist will definitely be able to help.
All right. Okay.
Lovely, thank you. And Amit has asked, is it worth looking at limited seating capacity, which is pre-booked? Great question.
Absolutely, yeah. So I was talking to Chef Atul Kocher about this, because they've obviously got a fine dining restaurant, and they're used to pre-booking, and I do think that that's going to come on to casual dining as well. So definitely, if you're able to provide that facility, pre-book the seating so you know how much capacity you've got at any given time. I think the difficulty here is again for those walk-ins. So casual diners are used to those walk-in environments. So you don't want to be turning people away because you've fully booked a restaurant. So again, communication is key here. So if you've got that all over your social media and over your website, that you've got a booking system and it's first come, first served, again, it's a case of not disappointing people, and make sure you manage expectations. Jeffrey's going, so thanks for joining us, Jeffrey.
All the way.
Yeah, so if you can pre-book, obviously that's going to help you because you know how many people to expect at any given time. It'll also help you manage the social distancing aspect of it. But again, I would just urge you to make sure that that's communicated in all of your channels so that you don't disappoint people.
Brilliant, thank you. And we've got a question from Chandra. Would you like to ask Natasha the question?
Yeah, hi Natasha. I mean, I'm just conscious that raw material prices have gone up, so it's a time to review prices on menus because profitability is everything. We may have all the turnover in the world, but unless we're making money, there's not much point. And also, if you're socially distancing people, means you've got less people in the restaurant as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really valid point, and something that everybody's going to be thinking of. I'm not a cost expert by any means, but what I would say is, again, communication is key. So if you are going to be putting prices up, don't just pounce it on your customers so that they're unawares. But in fact, communicate it and explain your reasoning so everybody knows what the situation is. Everyone knows that there's going to be supply difficulties. So making sure that you communicate that with your customers will not only put you in a good light because you're being honest with them, but it will provide them with clarity so they're not going to question why you've put your prices up. And again, it's worth noting here that you might be able to get economies of scale by teaming up with local businesses. So, you know, it might actually be more cost effective if you buy as a team of 3 or 4, for example, and have reduced cost that way. I think, again, it's about being really creative and thinking in ways that you might not have thought about before. You know, it is going to be a new world and things are going to be different, and something that is out of our control is material costs at the end of the day. So it's not something we could do anything about, but again, if you communicate it with your clients, I think you know, it doesn't matter what you do, you have to survive as a business. You can't be selling you know, below cost at the end of the day. So it's really, really important that you communicate that with your customers.
Brilliant, thank you. And I've got another question. So it's if we're kind of thinking about different ways of making our environments less clinical, have you got any ideas on trending colours or certain things we can be doing?
Yes. So I didn't mention colours because I felt like that might be the last thing on people's minds. But if you are looking at redesigning, then again, kind of thinking about that cocooning effect. So wanting people to feel comfortable, wanting people to feel welcome, and they are going to want to feel like, you know, they've come into somewhere safe. So the colours that are normally recommended for those kind of feelings are the warm colours, so the kind of the greens and the blues, are obviously trending with the rise of biophilic design. But the kind of the warmer colours as well, like the warm reds, terracotta, mustard, is a great one as well. And Pantone, the colour experts, have already released all of these colour predictions, which are actually pretty much in line with what I was expecting for last year anyway. So I don't think it's a huge change. In fact, I think more people will be incorporating that rather than ignoring the colour trends as most people normally do.
Brilliant. Thank you. Has anybody else got any questions and they'd like to unmute and ask Natasha?
Hi Natasha. Just on like all the ideas that you went through were fantastic and very new era. Presumably they would require significant investment as well. It just like, is there any tips that you have on sourcing those kind of products and like, you know, suppliers that are forthcoming in you know, trying to support the hospitality industry as best they can?
Again, I'm working with a lot of suppliers at the moment to kind of get to that stage where you know, previously anything that was considered eco-friendly was also considered the most expensive option, which is really unfortunate. But I think, again, you have to approach, you know, local is key at the moment. So people that might be, you know, providing a cost-effective solution in other parts of the world is not going to benefit you at the moment, unfortunately, because you do have to think about, you know, courier costs and all of that. But also you want to incorporate things immediately, so you don't want to be thinking about lead times and things like that. I will update you with a full list of suppliers if that's going to be of interest. Off the top of my head, you know, the ones that come to mind are, as Yogesh was asking, about plants. So I've been speaking to a lot of florists recently that are supplying, you know, they want to get rid of a lot of product. So they are selling that quite cost effectively. So definitely that's something to think about. Approaching local Facebook groups. I know that sounds really ridiculous, but, you know, people are all wanting to help each other at the moment. So make use of it. You know, talk to your community and talk to your local clientele, as well as your local suppliers and other businesses, and see what they're up to, because a lot of people are actually changing direction. So a lot of the suppliers that I used to work with in furniture are now doing PPE and, you know, aprons and masks and things like that. So, you know, it might be that you find something through an existing supplier that you didn't know about. So talk to your existing suppliers as well. So see what they're doing, see what they're, you know, where their mind is and what they're thinking about doing as well. Not just in terms of cost savings, but also in terms of alternative produce and supplies that they might have as well. It's a brilliant place to start. So, you know, your immediate channels would be the first place that I would talk to. I hope that answers the question.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, is there anybody got any more questions? I think we're...
Hopefully it was so comprehensive, nobody's got any other questions.
Yeah, just a
That
couple
was
of things
fantastic.
just a couple of things that I put on the chat boxes. I think communication, as everyone has said, is absolutely key. However you communicate, whether it's social media, Facebook pages, just keep in touch with customers. The A-board scenario that I put on there, now some councils have restrictions on those, but use the A-board to say we're about to open, we're going to open, use your window and everything else there. Advise people of the changes that you're making to make it safe for people to come in. Nextdoor.co.uk is a local sort of site where local residents look at that site for any help, any advice, etc. So again, then finally is check all your free listings. Google My Business is one of the best ones that you could get for, and it's free. Get your reviews and everything else sorted out on there, and use Google, because that's how your website gets higher ranking. Yale.com again has higher ranking. Some of the other ones like the best of local sites, they're all free. Just look out for those free sites, get your message out across there. Thank you.
And also just saying on that, Nextdoor have just literally opened up the business listings on there as well. So you can actually now list your business on there. It takes a couple of days, that's all, for them to just verify you. So I had to send off like a proof of limited company status, but it was really easy. Turn them in real quick, and then you can list on there as well. So when people are looking for more consumer sort of conversations, then actually you can inject your business into that as well. So it's a really, really strong platform now, definitely.
Yeah, those are great tips. Also, Facebook and Instagram have offered the ability to list your menus and things on there, so you can order directly through them, which is a great facility if you don't have it already. But yeah, definitely, there's a lot out there to help us. It's a case of tapping into it and making sure that you're using all the facilities available.